The room is dim, shadows pooling in the corners as Zara stands frozen behind a half-open door, her breath shallow, her heart a drumbeat. Light spills from a lamp, catching the pain in her eyes. Jason's voice cuts through, sharp with disdain. She's so boring and provincial, always clinging to that perfect little shell. I can't stand it anymore. Sophie's laugh, cruel and light, follows. And yet she still thinks you're head over heels. It's almost pathetic. Their chuckles slice into Zara, but her gaze hardens, a spark igniting. That moment broke me, her voiceover whispers, but it also woke me. What happens when betrayal becomes a catalyst? Can a woman rebuild from ashes into a force? Subscribe to catch every twist of Zara's journey and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Stay with us to uncover how Zara reclaims her power. You won't want to miss this. As dusk settled, the Atlanta skyline glowed molten gold, its towers reflecting ambition in their mirrored facades. Zara Mitchell, 38, stood at the helm of a polished conference room, her ivory silk blouse tucked into a tailored charcoal pencil skirt, exuding quiet elegance. Her natural curls were swept into a sleek updo, a single pearl hairpin catching the light. Her voice, steady and authoritative, filled the space as she unveiled a new marketing campaign to a room of executives. "This is about trust," she said, her gaze sweeping the faces. "About making our brand a story people believe in." Nods rippled through the room. As marketing director at a Fortune 500 company, Zara was a force, a black woman whose name carried weight in corporate circles. Yet beneath her composed surface, a faint unease had begun to stir, like a note played out of tune. Zara's heels, black patent leather, understated but sharp, clicked against the hardwood of her Buckhead townhouse as she entered that evening, her arms laden with takeout bags from her favorite soul food joint. The house smelled of cedar and jasmine, a haven she and Jason, her husband of 8 years, had crafted with care. She set the bags on the marble counter, expecting Jason's familiar presence, maybe sketching at the dining table or scrolling through his phone. Instead, silence greeted her, broken only by a low murmur from the study down the hall. Her brow creased. Jason's voice, warm and intimate, drifted through the air, not the brisk tone of a work call, but something softer, laced with a tenderness she hadn't felt from him in months. She kicked off her heels, her bare feet silent on the floor, and moved toward the sound. The study door stood slightly ajar, a thin beam of lamplight spilling into the hallway. She hesitated, her hand hovering near the knob, an instinct urging caution. "She's so boring and provincial," Jason's voice sliced through, low but venomous, each word heavy with contempt. "Always clinging to that perfect little shell. I can't stand it anymore." A woman's laugh followed, sharp and cruel, like the clink of shattered crystal. "And yet she still thinks you're head over heels," the voice taunted. "It's almost pathetic." Their laughter intertwined, Jason's chuckle merging with the woman's, cutting into Zara like a jagged edge. Her breath hitched, her fingers digging into the doorframe. She didn't push the door open, didn't scream, didn't move. She stood rooted, a statue forged in shock, as the words echoed, boring and provincial. The man she'd built her world around, who'd held her hand under starlit skies at their Martha's Vineyard vow renewal, had just reduced her to a mockery, a jest for some unseen woman. Her heart thundered, but her face remained a mask, honed from years navigating rooms where she was often the only one who looked like her. The call ended with a click, and Zara retreated, her steps mechanical. She returned to the kitchen, her mind a tempest of questions. Who was the woman? How long had this been happening? And why did those words, boring and provincial, sting more than the betrayal itself? She unpacked the takeout, arranging fried chicken and collards on plates, when Jason emerged, his smile effortless, disarming. "Hey, babe," he said, brushing a kiss across her cheek. "Smells incredible." His eyes, warm and brown, betrayed nothing, and that cut deeper. "Work call?" Zara asked, her voice even, though her pulse raced. She studied him, searching for a fissure in his composure. "Just a colleague," he said, too fast, grabbing a plate. "You know, late-night brainstorming." She nodded, her lips curving into a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Right." The word was a shield, a placeholder. She sat across from him at the dining table, the chandelier casting a soft glow over their meal, but the warmth of their usual dinners had vanished. Jason prattled about a new project, his hands animated, while Zara's thoughts churned, boring and provincial. The words wrapped around her like a heavy shawl, oppressive and suffocating. She pictured their early years, dancing at jazz clubs, laughing over botched Sunday brunches, dreaming of a legacy together. Had that Zara been boring, provincial, or had Jason simply stopped seeing her? After dinner, Jason headed for the shower, and Zara acted on impulse. She slipped into the bedroom, her fingers trembling as she lifted his phone from the nightstand. The screen lit up. His passcode, still their anniversary, felt like a cruel irony. She scrolled through his messages, her breath shallow. Under a contact labeled S, she found text that confirmed her fears. Miss you already, can't wait for tomorrow. No names, no outright confessions, but enough to twist the knife. She replaced the phone precisely, her hands steady now, her mind sharpening like a whetstone. Sleep evaded her that night. She lay beside Jason, his breathing calm, while her mind replayed the evening. She saw herself in that crimson gown at their friend's wedding last summer, twirling under the stars. Jason's hands on her waist, his laughter genuine. Or had it been? The memory felt stained now, like a canvas left too long in the rain. She didn't cry. Tears seemed too small for the ache in her chest, too small for the betrayal of being ridiculed by the man who'd vowed to cherish her. The next day, Zara moved through her routine with precision. Espresso, emails, and a morning meeting where she nodded and smiled on cue. But her thoughts were elsewhere, assembling the puzzle. She needed more than suspicion. She needed evidence. That evening, at a company gala, the air thick with perfume and ambition, she wore a sleeveless black sheath dress, its clean lines accentuating her poise, a delicate gold choker at her throat. She spotted Sophie, Jason's colleague, her blonde hair gleaming, her laugh too loud as she leaned into Jason's orbit. "Zara, you look so simple yet striking," Sophie said, her smile ablade, her eyes scanning Zara like a rival assessing a threat. Zara's smile was a mirror, polite but icy. "Thank you," she said, her voice smooth. But Sophie's words echoed Jason's, boring, provincial, and the connection snapped into place. Was Sophie the voice on the phone? The one mocking her? Zara's gaze shifted to Jason, laughing at Sophie's quip, his hand grazing her arm. The room tilted briefly, but Zara steadied herself, her heels firm on the marble floor. Later, alone in the bathroom, Zara faced the mirror, her reflection both familiar and foreign. "They think I'm weak," she whispered, her voice low but fierce. "They think I'll just take it." She straightened, her jaw set, her eyes alight with a fire she'd forgotten she possessed. She wouldn't confront Jason, not yet. She'd watch, she'd wait, she'd build her case. They'd underestimated her, but Zara Mitchell was no one's fool. As she re-entered the gala, the music swelling, she caught her reflection in a glass door. Tall, regal, unyielding. The first crack had formed, but it hadn't shattered her. It had awakened her. And Zara, for the first time in months, felt the pulse of a strength she was only beginning to reclaim. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting slatted shadows across Zara's face as she sat at her kitchen counter, a cooling espresso in hand. She wore a cream-wrapped dress, its soft fabric a stark contrast to the steel in her eyes. Sleep had been a fleeting guest, chased away by the echo of Jason's voice, his cruel words from the night before still a splinter in her mind. She opened her laptop, syncing it to the GPS app tied to Jason's car, a precaution she'd set up months ago for emergencies, never imagining it would serve this purpose. The screen blinked, revealing his location, a coffee shop miles from his office, at an hour when he'd claimed to be at a site visit. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She wasn't the woman he'd mocked anymore. She was the one watching. Zara moved through her day with calculated precision, her stilettos clicking as she navigated meetings, her smile a polished mask. But her thoughts were a storm, each glance at her phone a reminder of the betrayal unfolding. Mid-morning, she stepped into her office, closing the door and checked the GPS again. Jason's car was now at a residential address, one she didn't recognize. Her pulse quickened, but she didn't falter. She needed more than dots on a map. She needed truth. That afternoon, as she watered the ferns on her porch, a flash of movement caught her eye. Sophie, her blonde hair unmistakable, slipped out the back gate, her blouse slightly askew, her steps hurried. Zara's grip tightened on the watering can, her breath shallow. She forced her face into neutrality as Jason appeared moments later, his expression casual. Sophie dropped by with some plans, he said, brushing past her. You could have used the front door, Zara replied, her tone light, her eyes sharp. He shrugged, oblivious to the fault line forming beneath their lives. Inside, Zara's mind raced. Sophie's presence wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. She replayed the gala, Sophie's barbed compliment, the way Jason's hand had lingered on her arm. The pieces were aligning, but suspicion wasn't enough. She needed evidence, something undeniable. At a corporate event that evening, Zara wore a sleeveless burgundy dress, its fitted silhouette exuding quiet power, a silver cuff glinting at her wrist. The room buzzed with chatter, but her focus was singular. She watched Sophie and Jason from across the space, noting the subtle glances, the way Sophie's laugh tilted toward him. When Sophie excused herself, Zara followed, keeping her distance. In the hallway, she overheard Sophie on a call, her voice low. He's all in. Don't worry. Zara's stomach twisted, but she held her ground, her resolve hardening. Back home, Zara confided in Maya, her closest friend, over a glass of wine. The living room was dim, the air heavy with unspoken truths. Something's off, Zara admitted, her voice steady but raw. I saw her leaving our house today, Maya, and he's lying. Maya's eyes softened with concern. Confront him, she urged. You deserve answers. Zara shook her head, her jaw set. Answers won't mean anything without proof. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. Maya reached for her hand, but Zara's gaze was distant, her mind already plotting. The next morning, Zara made a call she'd never imagined needing. I need discretion, she told the private investigator, her voice calm but firm. Photos, timestamps, anything concrete. The investigator, a gruff man with a no-nonsense tone, agreed to start immediately. By evening, he delivered the first piece. A photo of Jason and Sophie at a cafe, their hands brushing across the table, their smiles too intimate for colleagues. Zara studied the image, her heart a tight knot, but her expression unyielding. They think I'm blind, she whispered, setting the photo aside. But I see everything now. She stood, smoothing her dress, and looked out at the night. The woman who'd once trusted blindly was gone, replaced by one who moved with purpose. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming her truth. Sophie and Jason had underestimated her, but Zara was no longer just a wife. She was a strategist, a survivor, and she was only getting started. Zara stood before her bedroom mirror, her reflection a study in resolve. She wore a fitted red dress, its bold hue a silent declaration of strength, a single diamond stud glinting at her ear. I am not what they think, she murmured, her voice a low vow. The sting of Jason's betrayal lingered, but it no longer paralyzed her. It fueled her. The GPS app on her phone, now a constant companion, showed Jason's car at his office, but she knew better than to trust his excuses. Today she would tighten the net, weaving suspicion into certainty. At a corporate gala that evening, the air shimmered with clinking glasses and forced laughter. Zara moved through the crowd, her presence commanding yet understated, her eyes sharp. Jason and Sophie were there, their interactions a carefully choreographed dance of subtlety, a shared glance, a laugh that lingered too long. Zara's stomach churned, but she kept her smile polished, her posture regal. She positioned herself near a pillar, close enough to observe without drawing attention. When Jason leaned in to whisper something to Sophie, their ease a private language, Zara's fingers tightened around her clutch. She didn't flinch, she cataloged. Later, as the gala wound down, Zara slipped into a quieter corner, checking her phone. The investigator's message waited. New images. Check your email. Her pulse quickened. She opened the encrypted file, revealing photos from earlier that week. Jason and Sophie at a boutique hotel, their hands brushing as they entered, her head tilted toward him in a way that screamed intimacy. Zara's breath caught, Not from pain, but from clarity. This was no longer a hunch. It was fact, captured in pixels and timestamps. The next morning, Zara sat at her kitchen counter, a black coffee cooling beside her. She wore a cream blouse and tailored trousers, her attire crisp, mirroring her focus. The investigator's latest delivery lay spread before her. Hotel receipts, time-stamped to match the photos, and a log of text messages pulled from a burner phone Jason thought he'd hidden. "Meet me at 8, one read. Can't stop thinking about you, another." Zara's lips pressed into a grim line. Each piece was a brick in the wall she was building, not to trap Jason, but to free herself. She transferred the files to a USB drive, her movements precise, her mind a blade honed by purpose. That afternoon, Zara drove to the hotel from the photos, her car gliding through the city's pulse. She wore sunglasses, less for style than for anonymity, and parked across the street. The glass doors reflected the midday sun, but her focus was singular. The GPS app pinged. Jason's car was here now. She waited, her breath steady until she saw them. Jason and Sophie stepping out together, his hand grazing her back as they checked in. Zara's camera clicked, capturing the moment, her hands unwavering. The image was stark, undeniable, a truth no lie could erase. Back home, Zara met with the investigator in her study, the room dim to match her mood. He slid a folder across the table, more receipts, a parking stub, a grainy video of Jason and Sophie entering the hotel's elevator, their laughter careless. "This is enough for any court," he said, his voice gruff. Zara nodded, her expression unreadable. "It's not just about court," she replied, her voice low. "It's about knowing I'm not crazy." She tucked the folder into a locked drawer, her resolve a quiet fire. That evening, Zara sat alone, the weight of her discoveries settling like dust. She didn't cry. Tears were a luxury she'd outgrown. Instead, she replayed the evidence in her mind. The photos, the texts, the video, each a nail in the coffin of her marriage. Jason's voice, that cruel dismissal from days ago, flickered briefly, but she pushed it aside. This wasn't about his words anymore. It was about her power. She stood, smoothing her blouse, and whispered, "They thought I'd break. They were wrong." As night fell, Zara looked out at the city's glow, her silhouette a promise. She wasn't the woman who'd stood behind a door, shattered by betrayal. She was the one holding the truth, ready to wield it. The game had changed, and Zara was no longer playing defense. Zara stood in her office, sunlight slanting through the blinds, her white silk dress a quiet armor against the chaos within. The news of her promotion to chief marketing officer had just come through, a hard-won victory that should have sparked joy. Instead, it sharpened her focus, a reminder of what she could achieve when she refused to break. Her fingers traced the edge of her desk, where a locked drawer held the growing dossier of Jason's betrayal. Photos, texts, receipts. Each piece was a step toward justice, and today she would add more. She sat, opening her laptop, her movements deliberate. The investigator's latest email waited, a recorded voicemail from Sophie, left on Jason's burner phone, her voice syrupy and unguarded. "Babe, you left your watch at my place again." Zara's jaw tightened, but her eyes remained dry. She saved the file, adding it to the USB drive that had become her silent ally. Digging deeper, she accessed their joint bank account, her breath catching as she uncovered transfers. Thousands siphoned to a boutique for gifts that never reached her. The audacity of it, the carelessness, ignited a cold fury. She screenshot each transaction, her hands steady, her mind a chessboard plotting moves. At noon, Zara slipped into a cafe, her taupe blazer and slim trousers blending into the lunchtime crowd. She met the investigator, his weathered face unreadable as he slid a new envelope across the table. Inside were photos of Jason and Sophie at a wine bar, her hand on his knee, and a credit card statement linking Jason to a necklace Zara had never seen. "He's not even trying to hide it," the investigator said, his tone flat. Zara's lips curved, not in a smile, but in resolve. "That's his mistake," she replied, tucking the envelope into her bag. She wasn't building a case to win Jason back. She was dismantling the lie she'd lived. That evening, Zara sat with Maya, the dim glow of a lamp casting shadows across their faces. Wine glasses sat untouched, the air thick with tension. "He's stealing from you, Zara," Maya said, her voice low, urgent. "From your future." Zara nodded, her gaze distant. "They think I'm nothing," she said, her words measured but fierce. "But I'm going to show them exactly who I am." Maya's eyes softened, but Zara's were flint, unyielding. She wasn't the woman who'd once crumbled at a cruel word. She was the one forging her path. Later, Zara attended a women's support group, her first time in such a space. She wore a simple black dress, its clean lines a canvas for her quiet strength. The room hummed with shared stories: loss, betrayal, survival. Zara listened, her silence not weakness but absorption, each voice a thread weaving into her resolve. When she spoke, her words were spare. "I thought love was enough. Now I know I'm enough." The women nodded, their eyes mirrors of her fire. She left feeling not just seen but fortified, her purpose clearer than ever. Back home, Zara sifted through Jason's belongings while he was out, her movements precise. In his briefcase, tucked beneath a stack of papers, she found a velvet box, a diamond bracelet, its price tag obscene, its recipient not her. Her heart thudded, not with pain but with clarity. She photographed it, returned it exactly as found, and added the image to her arsenal. The discovery wasn't a wound, it was ammunition. She stood, smoothing her dress, and whispered, "You thought I'd stay blind. You were wrong." The next morning, Zara met her lawyer, a woman whose sharp gaze matched her own. In a private office, Zara laid out the evidence: photos, recordings, and financial records. The lawyer's nod was curt, approving. "This is airtight," she said. "We'll ensure you're protected." Zara's voice was steady. "I don't want protection. I want what's mine." The lawyer's smile was a shared understanding, two women who knew the cost of being underestimated. As Zara walked out, her heels clicking with purpose, she felt the weight of her choices settling. She wasn't chasing revenge. She was claiming her worth. Jason and Sophie had built their lives on her trust, but Zara was rewriting the story. She wasn't the shadow they'd mocked. She was the storm-gathering strength, ready to upend their world with the truth. Zara stood before a full-length mirror, her reflection a portrait of unyielding resolve. She wore a tailored ivory suit, its crisp lines accentuating her poise, a pearl brooch at her collar, a subtle nod to elegance. Today was not about mourning a marriage. It was about claiming her truth. Her fingers brushed the USB drive in her purse, heavy with evidence: photos, texts, receipts, recordings, each a testament to her meticulous preparation. The courtroom awaited, and Zara was no longer the woman who'd stood behind a door, shattered by betrayal. She was a force, ready to rewrite her story. The courtroom buzzed with hushed murmurs as Zara entered, her heels clicking with deliberate cadence. She took her seat, her posture regal, her gaze steady. Jason sat across the aisle, his face a mask of forced calm, his eyes avoiding hers. Sophie, summoned as a witness, hovered at the edge, her usual confidence dimmed. Zara's lawyer, a woman with a razor-sharp presence, leaned in. "We've got this," she whispered. Zara nodded, her lips a tight line. This wasn't just a divorce, it was a reckoning. The judge, a stern figure with a no-nonsense air, called the session to order. Jason's attorney opened, painting him as a devoted husband blindsided by Zara's unreasonable demands. The words slid off her, meaningless against the truth she held. Her lawyer rose, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "My client seeks justice," she declared, "for a marriage betrayed by infidelity and deceit." She presented the evidence with surgical precision. Photos of Jason and Sophie at the hotel, their hands entwined, bank statements showing funds I'd diverted to lavish gifts. The voicemail from Sophie, her voice dripping with intimacy. Each piece landed like a gavel, dismantling Jason's facade. Zara's heart thudded as the images flashed on the screen, but her face remained impassive, a mask of control. She caught Jason's glance, fleeting and uneasy, and held it, her eyes a silent challenge. He looked away first. The courtroom air grew thick, the weight of truth pressing against the lies. Sophie took the stand, her answers faltering under cross-examination. It was just professional, she stammered, claiming the hotel visits were work-related. Zara's lawyer pounced, displaying a receipt time-stamped to a weekend. No meeting scheduled. Sophie's composure cracked, her words unraveling into contradictions. Her face flushed with the strain of her deceit. The judge's gaze sharpened, her pen scratching notes. Zara's mind flickered to the moment she'd overheard Jason's betrayal, the cruel words that had once pierced her. Now they were fuel, propelling her to this moment of clarity. She glanced at Maya, seated behind her friend's nod a quiet anchor. Her family's presence, a row of steadfast support, grounded her further. This wasn't just her fight. It was a stand for every woman who'd been underestimated. Jason's attorney tried to pivot, arguing for an even split of assets, claiming Zara's evidence was circumstantial. But the judge's raised eyebrow silenced him. Zara's lawyer closed with a final blow. A video from the hotel elevator, Jason and Sophie laughing, carefree, oblivious to the camera. The room stilled, the truth undeniable. Zara's chest tightened, not with pain, but with the weight of vindication. She had built this case brick by brick, and now it stood unshakable. The judge deliberated briefly, her verdict delivered in a voice that brooked no argument. Zara was awarded the house, a substantial portion of their savings, and alimony, the ruling citing Jason's egregious breach of trust. A ripple of murmurs followed, but Zara remained still, her expression serene. The gavel fell, a sound like freedom. Jason's shoulders slumped, his mask slipping, but Zara felt no pity. He'd made his choices, she'd made hers. As the courtroom emptied, Zara stood, smoothing her suit. Maya rushed to her, eyes shining. "You did it," she whispered. Zara's smile was small but real. "I did it for me," she said, her voice low, steady. Jason lingered near the exit, his mouth opening as if to speak, but Zara walked past, her gaze fixed ahead. He was no longer her anchor. She was her own. Outside, the air was sharp, cleansing. Zara paused, the weight of the verdict settling like a crown. She wasn't the woman they'd mocked, the one they'd thought would crumble. She was the architect of her justice, and this victory was only the beginning. Zara stood on the balcony of her new loft, the night air cool against her skin, her gold satin dress catching the faint glow of city lights. The weight of the courtroom victory lingered, not as a burden, but as a foundation, a testament to the strength she'd carved from betrayal. The divorce had not broken her, it had unshackled her, and now she was building a life that answered to no one but herself. Her fingers traced the railing, her eyes alight with a fire that had been smoldering for too long. This was no mere survival, it was rebirth. At work, Zara threw herself into her role as chief marketing officer with a ferocity that turned heads. She wore a tailored cream blazer over a black sheath dress, her presence commanding as she pitched a groundbreaking campaign to the board. Her voice, steady and resonant, wove data into vision, her ideas sparking nods and murmurs of approval. The campaign, a bold push for inclusivity, landed her team a national award. Her name now whispered not just in boardrooms but in industry circles. Each success was a brick in the new empire she was constructing, one where her worth was undeniable. Yet it was outside the office that Zara's transformation shone brightest. She accepted an invitation to speak at a women's empowerment workshop, her first step into a world beyond her pain. Dressed in a flowing burgundy top and slim trousers, she stood before a room of strangers, her heart pounding but her stance unwavering. "They tried to erase me," she began, her voice low, deliberate, "but I learned that my story isn't theirs to write." She didn't name Jason or Sophie, didn't dwell on the betrayal. Instead, she spoke of resilience, of choosing oneself when the world expects surrender. The room was silent, then erupted in applause, hands reaching for hers as women shared their scars. Their stories of loss, of being diminished, mirrored hers, and in their eyes Zara saw not pity, but kinship. Among them, she found a group of black women whose laughter and grit felt like home. Over coffee, they traded truths, their voices a chorus of survival. One, a single mother, spoke of starting over after a decade of abuse. Another, a lawyer, recounted fighting for her place in a field that tried to silence her. Zara listened, her silence a bridge, not a wall. Their strength fueled hers, and she realized she wasn't just healing, she was becoming a beacon. She started a blog, her words raw yet poised, chronicling not the scandal but the triumph of reclaiming one's spirit. Posts titled The Power of No and Owning Your Enough drew thousands of readers, comments flooding with gratitude. You gave me courage. I'm not alone. Zara read each one, her chest tight with purpose. The pinnacle came at a major empowerment conference, where Zara was invited to deliver the keynote. She wore a sleek white jumpsuit, its clean lines a canvas for her newfound radiance, a gold bangle glinting at her wrist. The auditorium was packed, faces turned toward her like flowers to the sun. She stepped to the podium, her breath steady, and began. Strength isn't in how loud you scream. It's in how you stand when the world expects you to fall. Her voice, rich with conviction, filled the space, weaving her journey into a universal truth. She spoke of the moment she chose to fight, not for revenge but for herself, of the power in knowing your worth. The crowd rose, their applause a thunder that shook her core, not with fear but with affirmation. As she stepped off the stage, women lined up, their hands clasping hers, their whispers, "Me too, thank you," a tapestry of shared resilience. Zara's eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. She didn't need to cry to prove she'd survived. Her presence, her voice was proof enough. Maya, waiting in the wings, pulled her into a hug. "You're unstoppable," she said, her voice thick. Zara smiled, soft but fierce. "I'm just beginning." That night, alone in her loft, Zara stood by the window, the city's pulse a quiet companion. She wasn't the woman who'd once doubted her worth, nor the one who'd gathered evidence in shadows. She was Zara, reborn, her heart no longer a battlefield but a sanctuary. The past had shaped her, but it didn't own her. She was writing a new chapter, one where she was the hero, and the world was starting to listen. Zara stood in the doorway of a modest office, her cream silk blouse and tailored black trousers a quiet testament to her unyielding grace. The sign above read, "Rise Collective," her vision made flesh, a consultancy to empower women rebuilding after life's storms. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a creator, sculpting a legacy from the ashes of betrayal. Her fingers brushed the doorframe, her eyes alight with purpose. The past had forged her, but today she was shaping the future. Her mornings began with interviews, each candidate a story of resilience. She sat across from a single mother, her resume worn but her gaze fierce, and saw not just potential, but a mirror of her grit. "You're hired," Zara said, her voice steady, offering not just a job, but a lifeline. Rise Collective was more than a business. It was a sanctuary for those who'd been told they weren't enough. Zara built her team from survivors, divorcees, mothers, women of color, each bringing heart to a mission that was as personal as it was profound. The launch of Rise Collective's first program, a series of free workshops on financial literacy and self-advocacy, tested her resolve. She wore a fitted burgundy dress, its bold hue a silent vow, as she pitched to potential sponsors in a sleek conference room. One, a key investor, wavered, citing budget cuts. Zara leaned forward, her voice a blend of steel and warmth. "This isn't charity," she said. "It's investment in women who will change the world." Her vision, data-backed, soul-driven, won him over, his signature securing the funds. The victory wasn't just financial, it was proof that her voice could move mountains. The workshops were a triumph, the room alive with women scribbling notes, their faces lit with possibility. Zara moved among them, her presence a quiet anchor, listening as they shared dreams of starting businesses or leaving toxic relationships. One woman, her hands trembling, admitted she'd never believed she could be more. Zara knelt beside her, her words soft but fierce. "You already are." The woman's eyes shimmered, and Zara felt the weight of her purpose settle deeper. This was her legacy, not just surviving, but lifting others as she rose. To recharge, Zara took a solo trip to Paris, a city she'd once dreamed of with Jason. Now it was hers alone. In a flowing ivory top and slim jeans, she wandered cobblestone streets, her laughter free as she danced to a street musician's saxophone. At a cafe, she wrote poetry, her pen carving truth she'd once buried. I am not the shadow they cast. I am the light they couldn't dim. The act wasn't escape, it was reclamation. Each moment a brushstroke on the canvas of her new life. Back at Rise Collective, Zara faced a crisis when a workshop venue canceled last minute. She rallied her team, securing a new space within hours. Her calm decisiveness a beacon. The event went on, women filling the room, their voices a chorus of hope. Zara spoke briefly, her words raw. They'll tell you you're not enough. Prove them wrong by building what they can't imagine. The applause was thunderous, but it was the quiet thank yous afterward that pierced her. Women clasping her hands, their gratitude a mirror of her healing. One evening, Maya joined her for dinner, the table strewn with plans for Reese Collective's next phase. You're changing lives, Maya said, her voice thick with pride. Zara's smile was soft, her eyes distant. They're changing mine, she replied. She thought of the women she'd met, their courage, their scars, and saw her journey reflected. The betrayal that had once defined her was now a footnote, its power eclipsed by the empire she was building. As the day closed, Zara stood alone in her office, a letter from a workshop participant in hand. You showed me I can start over. Her chest tightened, not with pain but with purpose. She wore no crown, needed no throne. Her legacy was in the lives she touched, the futures she helped forge. The woman who'd once stood in shadows, stung by cruel words, was gone. In her place was Zara, architect of hope, her heart a forge where pain became power. She stepped to the window, the night alive with possibility. Rise Collective was just the beginning, a spark that would grow. Zara wasn't just rebuilding her life. She was crafting a monument to resilience, one that would stand long after her name faded. Zara stood in a softly lit hall, her mustard yellow gown flowing like liquid sunlight, a delicate gold chain at her neck catching the glow. The charity gala buzzed around her, a swirl of laughter and clinking glasses, but she was a calm center, her presence magnetic. Rise Collective, her brainchild, was now a national force. Its workshops and mentorship programs lifting women from the shadows to the spotlight. Tonight's event was a celebration of that mission, but for Zara it was more, a testament to the woman she'd become, forged in the fire of betrayal and reborn in her strength. She moved through the crowd, her smile warm but commanding, shaking hands with donors who now sought her vision. A table displayed a photo from her past, a snapshot with Jason, their smiles frozen in a moment she'd once believed eternal. She paused, her fingers brushing the frame, but no pain followed. The memory was just that, a memory stripped of power. She turned away, her gaze steady, and joined Maya at the podium to introduce Rise Collective's latest initiative, a scholarship for women rebuilding after personal crises. The crowd's applause was a wave, but Zara felt it in her bones, a confirmation of her purpose. Mid-evening, a familiar figure approached. Jason, his suit crisp but his eyes uncertain. She hadn't seen him since the courtroom, and his presence stirred no longing, only clarity. Zara, he began, his voice low. I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. She studied him, her expression unreadable. You called me boring and provincial, she said, her voice even, cutting. You thought I'd break, but look at me now. Jason flinched, his apology faltering. I've changed, he tried, but Zara raised a hand, her smile cool, final. I don't need your change. I've found my own. She walked away, her steps deliberate, leaving him a shadow in her wake. The gala's centerpiece was Zara's speech, her moment to seal her journey. She stepped to the microphone, her gown shimmering, her voice a blade wrapped in velvet. They'll try to write your story, she began, her eyes sweeping the room, to tell you who you are, what you're worth, but you hold the pen. She spoke of resilience, of choosing oneself when the world demands surrender, her words weaving her pain into universal truth. The audience leaned in, captivated, some wiping tears, others nodding in recognition. I was told I wasn't enough, she continued, but I built something they couldn't imagine. The applause thundered, a roar of affirmation, and Zara stood tall, her heart full not of vengeance, but of victory. Afterward, women approached, their hands clasping hers, their whispers, You gave me hope. I'm starting over because of you. A chorus of shared strength. Maya hugged her, eyes shining. You're a force, she said. Zara's laugh was soft, free. I'm just me, she replied. But the truth was deeper. She was the architect of her redemption, a woman who'd turned betrayal into a legacy. Later alone, Zara stood under a starry sky, a notebook in hand, her pen tracing poetry. I am not their shadow, I am my son. She wore a simple ivory sweater and jeans, her comfort a reflection of her ease in her skin. The words flowed, not of pain but of power, each line a step further from the woman who'd once stood behind a door, shattered by lies. She thought of the gala, of Jason's hollow apology, of the women whose lives she'd touched. Her journey wasn't about erasing the past, but transcending it, building something enduring in its place. As she closed the notebook, Zara felt a quiet certainty. Rise Collective was her monument, but her true legacy was within, the unshakable belief in her worth. She looked out at the night, her breath steady, her heart no longer a battlefield but a sanctuary. The woman who'd once doubted herself was gone, replaced by one who owned every piece of her story. The gala's echoes faded, but Zara's voice lingered in the hearts of those she'd inspired. She was no longer defined by what she'd lost, but by what she'd created. A life, a mission, a light that would not dim. As she walked back inside, her steps light, she carried a truth that needed no applause. She was enough, and always had been. What did Zara's journey stir in you? Her courage to rise above betrayal, her strength in building a legacy, or the way she claimed her own story? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear how her story speaks to you. Thank you for joining us on this powerful ride, for standing with Zara through every crack and triumph. Stay tuned for more stories of resilience and redemption. Until next time, keep owning your light.